So 9th of February 2026, first thing, my favorite sentence, being human is not a mental disorder. Secondly, if it's the first time you're seeing one of my posts, you may want to follow because my channel is all about the rise of psychiatry, well, unpacking the rise of psychiatry and modern psychology and what those industries are doing in destroying our civilization as we know it right now. And I focus particularly on the field of education and the dumbing down of our society, what's happening, but also most importantly is what you can do about it. And thirdly, if you follow me already, I have some good news on a very grim subject. Now, good news because it looks like some people are waking up, or there's some waking up going on at the moment. And the grim subject is the number of children in England on psychiatric drug for ADHD and further statistics, which I finally managed to get hold of. Well, I didn't make that much effort. It came into my inbox. So this is from What Doctors Don't Tell You, and I've already discussed that publication. It's a publication that publishes various medical journal, a lot of information that the mainstream media will not publish. And I've given you the links and everything. This is an example of their magazine. Anyway, I'm going to put the full email at the end of the post so you can read it for yourself. But let's go straight into it. And I've got a bunch of evidence there for you as well. But if you follow me already, you've seen a lot of this evidence, so you'll probably know it. But here, listen, let's go right into it. It says Steve Jobs. So actually, this is dated, beg your pardon, dated 8th of February. So I got that yesterday. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, was a marketing genius. He went against the grain of traditional wisdom, which states that you study a market and its needs and then produce a product or service that addresses those concerns. Jobs did the very opposite. He created a product that nobody even guessed they needed, iPod, anyone, and then made it so desirable that everyone suddenly wanted one. Big Pharma has taken a leaf from Jobs' playbook. For the last 60 years, it's been medicalizing mental health issues, and it's been parceling up a range of emotions and thoughts into individual problems, quote unquote. To give you an idea of the scope of their sullen craft, the 1960 edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, the Psychiatrist Bible. So this is very nice to see that the Psychiatrist Bible is being used in other contexts, because obviously I use that term, but it's good when you see other organizations using that word, because the DSM, which I've got here, is the Bible that psychiatrists use to diagnose our civilization. And in fact, if you please watch my pinned post, if you haven't, with that book, with this Bible here, you can diagnose and classify every single human being on this world or on this planet. Whether the psychiatrists diagnose themselves, that's a different question. But here we go. So the DSM, the Psychiatrist Bible, listed around 160 mental health issues. This is back in 1960, but I'm actually going to show you the real stats. The latest edition, published in 2022, cites more than 450. Now, this is the DSM-5, and this is not the latest edition. There's been a reprint in 2022, which is still the DSM-5, but it's a text revision. So they've added a few more mental disorders there. Now it says, go back further to 1918, when psychiatry was in its infancy. Obviously, I make enough posts on that, so you'll know that already. When psychiatry was in its infancy and it had just 22 mental health issues to diagnose. Has the scope of our mental health problems nearly tripled in 60 years? Or has Big Pharma, a la Jobs, created a market and then come up with a remedy? If the latter, their dark arts are crippling society. Nearly 30% of young people in England alone have been declared unfit to work, usually because of mental health problems such as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety or autism. In the under 16, now this is really shocking, 760,000 English children have been declared disabled because of a mental health issue. And the country also has around 2.5 million people diagnosed with ADHD. Now, that number does not include the 8+ million on antidepressants. And I discussed that in a post a few months ago, and I have it here. I'll just go over it after. It's not only an English phenomenon. In Iceland, 20% of young people are taking an ADHD medication, while 11% of American children have been diagnosed with the problem, and half of these, around 3.5 million, are taking medication. And you know it's over 3 million because I've discussed that in the post before Christmas, where I obtained the stats from the cchr.org, CCHR International, with the Freedom of Information Act. So I give you the stats on that. This tsunami of overdiagnosis and treatment has been driven by the drugs industry. Back in 2012, What Doctors Don't Tell You, so this publication, got hold of a private email sent out by one drug company to its sales force, urging them to encourage psychiatrists to prescribe more ADHD medication as too few children were taking the drugs, especially in Europe. There's been a small pocket of resistance in the psychiatric community. Some are arguing that many of these problems are natural reactions to life's hard knocks and are transitory. And certainly they don't need treating with drugs, which is perfectly what I was telling you before. Being human is not a mental disorder. You know, the living life and the ups and downs of life are not a mental disorder. Now, mental health issues aren't set and fixed complaints, in the same way that arthritis might be characterized, for instance, but are predicated by feelings and emotions that can change. And the rest of the email is only a couple of paragraphs, and I put it there because I'm running out of time, but it does say that naming of the problem was driven by Big Pharma and by the US health insurance system that needed to have a condition and a remedy before it would pay out. When the drugs industry started to take an interest in mental health, Freudian analysis was enjoying a resurgence, but it was amorphous and with no guarantee of success, hopeless. Anyway, the point is there's a bit of a waking up, so that's always a good news. I didn't realize I was trying to get a bit of the stats with the children in England. Under 16, 760,000 English children have been declared disabled. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's shocking. And 30% of young people in England alone have been declared unfit to work. You know? Anyway, I'm going to show you some stuff as well. So do you remember this? This is from August last year. And I did a whole post on this. And there was the stats by Professor Joanna Moncrief that at the time, this is August last year, that antidepressants are currently taken by more than 8 million people in England alone, around 15% of all adults. So we're not looking at children here, we're looking at adults, right? That is not, ADHD drugs are not antidepressants. So per that email here is 2.5 million people on on ADHD drugs. And I also showed you how you could get hold just on the internet. For example, this is Concerta by Janssen. This is an ADHD drug, which is methylphenidate hydrochloride, or Ritalin, I think is another name for it. And I showed you all the, all the side effects. It's 19 pages. It's 19 pages. It is shocking. It is shocking. And we have millions of people on this stuff. Now, you'll remember, for example, I did a post printed out from the Royal College of Psychiatrists that in England, in the UK, I beg your pardon, children as young as 11 are being given electric shock treatments. So we're having a real situation here with our kids being drugged. In the US, children as young as 5 and below are being, children as young as 6 months old are given ADHD drugs. So that was in my post, and I showed you the stats for that. And children as young as 5 and some a bit younger in some US states are being given electric shock treatments. So just keep that in mind because it's so disgusting. So we have an assault on our society at the moment. So I wanted to really read you the stats because I think it's good that it's kind of waking up a bit. We need more people to wake up. as a parent, just make sure you just stay away from all this stuff if you don't want your children to be killed off. The moment you get yourself labeled, you get your family member labeled, you get your child labeled, you are signing theirs or your death warrant. In the current system, that's what's happening. I've made so many posts on this. Please watch my pinned post if you're new to this account. And now I want to show you the truth, because this is the 1952 edition of the first DSM, right? Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. This publication came out shortly after the institution of the World Health Organization in 1948. Again, I've discussed this, it's all connected. Before that, there was something called the Classification of Causes of Death. It was a classification system invented around 1898 by a French statistician, which was intended to list all the different causes of death, and it started being used internationally. Now, we're looking at causes of death only. In 1948, when the WHO was set up, they acquired that list and took responsibility for it, and it became the International Classification of Disease, ICD. At the time, in 1952, at the time of this publication, it was ICD-6. And then at that moment is when the WHO added mental disorders in that classification of disease. Yet it was meant to be causes of death, but they included that. And it is correct that at the start, and I'm going to show you directly, here we have, you can print that, you can download that off the internet so you can see that yourself. There's about 3 pages, just 3 pages of, just there, of actual brain condition, as in the brain damage, so meningitis and so on. So these are not in the newer books anymore. But on the actual mental deficiency, right, this is mental deficiency, we're only looking at 4 pages, literally. Right, that's all we're looking at. And now, in the latest issue, you are looking at hundreds. And it's all at the front there. We're looking at about 20 pages. It all looks like that. It's more than that, actually. I'll show you what they look like. We're looking at 20 of those pages, roughly. And I want to show you one last thing here. This is a DSM-3R revised edition. So DSM-3 was published in 1980. At the time, the disorder, quote unquote, attention deficit disorder, ADD, entered the DSM-3 in 1980. Now you have to realize, please watch my pin post, because I can't talk more about that right this second, but all those diseases, quote unquote, are fabricated. And I explained that in some other posts. But anyway, in 1980, attention deficit disorder was introduced. In 1987, with this revision here, this is a 1987 revision, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, was introduced to change ADHD. Sorry, to change ADD, beg your pardon, right? So this whole business of ADHD only entered this book in 1987. So we're looking at, okay, now let's say 1980, because they called it ADD. So we're looking at 45 years. And what stats did I give you last time? Right now we have over 280 million human beings on planet Earth under psychiatric drugs, all psychiatric drugs, right? That's 1/32 of the population of Earth, and millions upon millions upon millions of children on psychiatric drug for being children. Childhood is not a mental disorder.